My absolute favorite story of the week has to do with an anti-drug campaign that was launched by the Australian government. Now, they're trying to convince young people that it's a bad idea to smoke marijuana. But a bad strategy in doing that is incorporating something that's going to become a viral hit. And that's exactly what happened with Stoner Sloth. Don't believe me? Take a look.
Okay, time's up. Pens down. Delilah. Pens down, Delilah.
Stoner Sloth.
Jason, could you pass the salt, please, darling? Jason, the salt.
Stoner Sloth.
All right, so those are just two examples of these awesome ads. And again, they were aimed at convincing kids to not smoke weed, but the exact opposite has happened. Well, I don't know if the opposite has happened. I'm sure kids who were prone to smoking weed were going to do it anyway. But now people are creating like merchandise like designed after the Stoner Sloth. The videos are going viral because people find it funny. They're not taking the message seriously because the message itself, I think, is flawed, right? So first of all, I love like the music that goes on like as soon as the sloth comes into play, right? It's like doom, 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 ah, right? It's just not effective. And here's the thing, if you're a governmental official who wants to educate young people about the harmful effects of marijuana, I get it. It's not a completely harmless drug. Although I smoke it and I don't think it's that big of a deal, I don't think it's a good idea for teenagers to smoke it, right? Your brain's still developing and there still needs to be some studies done to figure out what kind of adverse effects it could have on young people. But you gotta be honest with them. You can't like fearmonger and make it seem as though marijuana makes you so incapacitated that you can't function, that you're gonna convince, or you're gonna confuse, I should say, salt with salad when someone's asking you to pass the salt at a dinner table. Like, just educate yourself before you try to educate others about marijuana. That's all I really want to say about this. Sandra, what do you think? Make your point.
So weird. I feel like this was not, well, this is great. I wish that more people who want to make viral videos for entertainment would take after the Australian government. But I feel that this is a really silly time to be criminalizing marijuana when there are so many bigger fish to fry.
Yeah.
Really, marijuana, it's equivalent and less dangerous than alcohol in a lot of ways. So unless they're having some situation in Australia I'm not aware of, why are you spending your money and attention on this? Not important. Although I do totally get about the brain development thing, that is important. Also, this reminds me of AHF, which is an organization that's really sex negative and attacks, is like really fearmongers around STIs here in the US, and are the people behind like forcing porn stars to use condoms, which you think is like a great idea, but actually when you look at the statistics and the science and stuff, they're just doing the exact same thing with sex and condoms and porn as marijuana and drug use in teenagers in Australia. So it's interesting to see that.
That's really interesting. I feel like we can do an entire show on like the fear mongering that happens with sex. And there is a lot of that, of course, in the US and a lot of other like conservative countries. Maytha, what do you think about this? Make your point.
You were not overhyping this story at all. It is the best of the week, the month. You had to be stoned to come up with the Stoner Sloth kids. I don't know how. And it was really funny because the Australian MP of New South Wales, which I believe this is where the video came from, he even made fun of it, not knowing that some people on his elected official team made these videos and asked if Stoner Sloth was related to Chewbacca. Listen, I mean, I agree with you. I think that the best strategy is to be honest with kids, have open conversation. Again, do we have to go to fear mongering to convince our children to actually take their health into their own consideration with the daily choices that they make? I believe that's what good parenting is. help your children make those decisions so when they're confronted and they wonder whether or not, okay, should I try this? How much should I try? Should I have conversations with my parents about this? That they're equipped for those moments.
Yep.
But the best part of this too were the mock videos. I really wish y'all need to watch the mock videos
Yes.
because they did one with the passing the salt that was an ad for an anti-sodium salt campaign.
That's so funny.
It was excellent.
Yes, and yeah, anti-salt sodium campaigns. I mean, I feel like in a lot of ways, especially in America, that makes more sense than an anti-marijuana campaign.
Sugar
Yeah,
too.
sugar especially. So that's a great point. All right, so here's the personal question for the story. Tell us about a time you tried to hide being either drunk or high from friends and family. Sandra.
Oh yeah, come to me first. Yeah. So as you may know, I go to Burning Man every once in a while, which is a festival in the desert where people camp and have a good time.
And don't hide taking drugs though.
Oh, there's plenty of hiding and taking gloves. I mean, lots of people don't take drugs. I just tend to party fairly sober in my life. But on one particular day, it was sunny and beautiful, I took, a friend gave me a little bit of acid, and I have very little experience on acid. And so I took that just thinking that I'd have like a nice journey and just kind of experience this. And then the biggest windstorm with tons of dust came in, and my camp, which like is dust free inside, like the tent started to come apart. Oh, wow. And so we all had to run in and like fix it during like what felt like a scene from The Wizard of Oz where like just there's so much wind. And I am just like, it's hitting me. And I'm like, keep it together, Sandra. And so I'm like, and they're like naked people running around. Like it's just there's a lot, like it already is an acid trip without the acid, and then I'm like high out of my mind. Anyway, no one could tell I was high. The end.
That's amazing. That's amazing because I feel like I have a really hard time hiding it. But I have a doozy of a story that has to do with psychedelics. You, Neetha.
So I've partaken in pot, and I'm always usually fine. We've had conversations about this on the show. The one thing I noticed that I'm having an oversensitive reaction to lately are edibles.
Yes.
But
agreed.
But I took it to the next extreme, not knowing I was taking it to the next extreme. I was on a cruise ship from Miami to the Bahamas, and then on the way back. And my friend the whole weekend was just trumping up this pot tea that she had. And she was like, we're all gonna take it, don't worry, like we'll get tea bags and we'll share some of it because I don't have enough to go around. I was like, fine. So she seeped my teacup first, which means it had the most concentration, and then she was seeping everybody else's. And so again, it's not registering. The week before, I had a bad edible trip. I'm not making the connection that this is not just an edible, but this is like an edible on acid.
Yeah.
That I'm taking. Pure. It's the most concentrated that you could get. So I think nothing of it. I drink all of it. And actually, the Whalers were playing outside, and it was great, and I was enjoying the Whalers. And then all of a sudden, I feel my movements just slowing down. Oh, no. And then I go into a room, an auditorium, and then I just feel really hypersensitive and overwhelmed. Then I go into my room, and that's where the mass paranoia, the paralyzation happens. But I feel so suffocated in this room, I need to get out. But it got so bad that I had to convince myself not to go to the top of the deck because I was so sensitive to people's energies. I was afraid I was going to jump off the boat.
Oh my gosh.
It was the worst. I thought my brain was going to be severely damaged. As I was telling you beforehand, I had like complete sympathy with people who are suffering from mental illness because I could see how you are trapped in your mind and how overwhelming it becomes and how easily stimulated you can be by people and how there's very little recourse for people who don't understand what you're going through to sympathize. It was never...
Stoner sloth, everyone.
Wow, now you're making me think that those governmental officials in Australia did do their research.
Just the edibles. That's all.
No, I've had edibles before where I felt like I could not control my body. Like I did feel paralyzed. Like I didn't want to move from like the bed or wherever I was. And also, the paranoia, I think, is the worst thing.
Oh, absolutely.
It's interesting that a lot of these like anti-drug ads, anti-marijuana ads to be specific, don't focus on the paranoia aspect of it because that does exist for a lot of people. Okay, so for me, I had a psychedelic trip that made me nervous and I was trying to hide it from people. I was supposed to go to like a rock concert at Griffith Park, at the Greek Theater at the Griffith Park. And so me and my boyfriend parked the car like pretty far away from Greek theater because there was so much traffic getting in. But before we did, we decided to eat some mushrooms, right? And I had mushroom tea before, and it was such a mild, enjoyable, euphoric experience that I thought it was gonna be like a piece of cake. But it was the first time that I ate it, and we both shared an eighth. And then all of a sudden we start walking up. And for those of you unfamiliar with Griffith Park and the Greek Theater, you have to walk up a pretty steep pathway in order to get there. Before I know it, and keep in mind, it's like a pretty cool night, I'm like sweating like crazy. And so is he. We're like, our body temperature is going up. Like, I feel like my heart rate is really going. And I'm like, oh my God, it's hitting me, and it's hitting me really hard. And then finally I realized we have to pick up our tickets from will call, which means we have to communicate with people, and I'm in no position to communicate. It was funny because he wouldn't stop talking, but I was just like quiet, like absorbing everything that was happening. So then we get to will call, and I was like, Anna, keep it together, just like Sandra, right? And the lady was like, okay, I'm gonna need your confirmation number. I don't have my confirmation number. I have to look through my phone.
I don't know what my last name is.
Yeah. And I was like, and this is what Christian did. He was like, oh my God. he just turned his back, and I had to like figure it out. Finally, we get the tickets. We walk into the venue, we sit down, and it's like the worst situation because you're surrounded by people, and when you're on mushrooms, you don't want to be surrounded by anyone. So like 2 minutes into the concert, we left. He's like, you want to go? I was like, so we left, we went to Griffith Park, we laid out, stared up at the stars, and then I randomly started crying for no reason. So that was my last psychedelic trip, and it was interesting. And actually the crying part, maybe one day I'll talk about it in detail on the show. It was one of the best things that could have happened to me at that point because there were all of these suppressed emotions that I wasn't coping with, and it really kind of brought it to the surface, and all of a sudden I was just like dealing with it. And I felt like a detox, like an emotional detox afterwards. So that was my experience. Comment in the section below. Tell us what you think about the story, whether or not you've ever had to hide the fact that you were high or drunk among family members and friends. We do love reading your stories, so comment below, and we'll see you soon. All right, so those are just two examples of these awesome ads. And again, they were aimed at convincing kids to not smoke weed, but the exact opposite has happened. Well, I don't know if the opposite has happened. I'm sure kids who were prone to smoking weed were gonna do it anyway. But now people are creating like merchandise like designed after the stoner sloth. The videos are going viral because people find
Salt.
Stoner sloth.
Jason, could you pass the salt, please, darling? Jason, this.
My absolute favorite story of the week has to do with an anti-drug campaign that was launched by the Australian government. Now, they're trying to convince young people that it's a bad idea to smoke marijuana. But a bad strategy in doing that is incorporating something that's going to become a viral hit. And that's exactly what happened with Stoner Sloth. Don't believe me? Take a look.
Okay, time's up. Pens down. Delilah. Pens down, Delilah.
Stoner sloth.